Okay, good.
We're rolling on this.
I don't know. I kind of want to sound like Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks in Splash or Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan?
Tom Hanks in The Terminal.
Ah,
Nice.
Russian.
Russian voice, or
Very
Ukrainian
good.
accent.
Very good.
Well, this is the first episode of our podcast. We've entitled it Cosmic Sandbox. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Welcome to the show.
That's right. That's a clap.
It's a golf clap.
That's a clap. And it took us roughly, I think, 3 months to come up with that title. So.
I know. Well, all because of we couldn't use Beyond the Box.
Yeah.
Edit that out. Don't talk about it. Brings up
Chop
anxiety and all these
Chop that.
I don't know.
pressures.
Are we the government, Geoff? Are we editing out, censoring the First Amendment right
That's
here?
what we should. We should have a foot pedal.
right.
We should have a foot pedal that I can just like reach over and hit, and it like censors and it beeps things out.
You got to time it just right so you can just step on it and just censor out your words.
It's like a drum pedal. It's a bass pedal.
Otherwise, we'd have to go through it all the way in post and edit everything, and we're not going to do that. We don't have time for that.
No. So what is our show about, really? Cosmic Sandbox.
The Cosmic Sandbox. Well, the main reason we decided to start this show was there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world, and just on every different level, whether you look at governments and institutions or just ideologies and like just social frameworks and just how people relate and work and live. And I think it's been trying to get a handle on all of that. And I think all of us in our own way have gone through just a variety of changes over the last few years that have led to this sense. I don't want, everybody calls it like the awakening, like you're having some kind of a global awakening, and everybody has their own personal awakening to things and there's so many different levels, and I think it's just a sense of these conversations have been so helpful. They've been so beneficial, the way we all sit around and jam and talk about this stuff. And it's helped me tremendously to have a better sense of clarity on everything, whether it's just my own personal stuff, like big macro picture world type stuff, and just how other people are affected, like learning how to talk about certain things with people, because there's so many touchy subjects that you don't even want to talk about. Yeah,
and I feel like for me, when you do get into those subjects, with people who are really comfortable with talking without their ideas, that's when things get really interesting. I love those big picture conversations where you could talk about fringe stuff and again, not have somebody get blown up on you or judge you or whatever, and just see where the conversation goes. I like that.
Yeah. So.
Most deaf. It's one of those places you can feel safe in when you want to talk about the ideas that you've researched on your own and the questions that you may have about the things that have come up in your life. And it's nice to be able to be in a place where you can voice those opinions and you can voice those theories and those thoughts, and you can bounce them off other people. You can have that be in a conversation. You can have it be in a light discussion. You can even have a small argument in it, and it can be in a safe place. So, I mean, going back to what Geoff had said earlier, we are at a place where I feel that more and more people are bombarded with so much information on a daily basis. You have so much access at this point. Whether that information is correct or incorrect, that is in the eye of the beholder. That is essentially where that person is coming from. So another thing that I feel that we talk about is we look at the sources, we look at the places that this information is coming from, and we do the best to apply that to what we already have as far as our thoughts and our ideologies and our minds as well. So whether it be a subject that we speak on, a current topic, a world topic, political, geopolitical, sociological, anthropological, ancient civilizations, extraterrestrial, whatever it might be, again, we are using not only our own interpretation of that, but the small resources or the vast resources that are available, and we're just making small talk, hypothetical guesses, and just trying to give a different perspective on things and play around with the ideas of, hey, what if, what about this, what about that? So,
yeah. Well, the way I look at it, that the show is kind of it is a sandbox. It's a place to play. It's going to be a great big adventure, and we're curious to see, in each episode where the journey takes us. And Cosmic gives us our bigger picture word. So welcome to the show. Cue the music, everyone. You do.
To emerge from a spaceship after that, and then just it's like in the middle of a football stadium, and all these people are just like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?"
I just touched down in mine, so I don't know what you're talking about. I just touched down. It's pretty awesome.
I love it.
Pretty
It's so
awesome.
big. It's so big. It's a big song. I like it.
Good. That's how we kick it off in a cosmic fashion.
I do like that. I think that's the best way. Like in the name. Well, this goes back a little bit into our conversation of even just trying to come up with the name, because it has to be a summation of the type of conversations we want to have, that we're going to talk about. And this whole notion of like a cosmic sandbox, like it just sounds silly, but that's exactly what it is. It's supposed to just be I think the key is the ability to have conversations without feeling like you're going to get judged or there's anything is really taboo. It's just like a creative space for you to sit down and just throw out anything and see where that goes, and ask big questions, ask what ifs, and kind of really extrapolate to the extreme on just any particular subject that still encompasses a lot of the stuff that is this big picture environment. Like when we talk about, like we've talked about, you and I, Matt, talked a lot about this whole notion of going from almost a Earth-based society to more of a cosmic galactic type society, and that's a massive shift, and that the difference in perception from one point to the other is just huge.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's probably why, people are starting to think that maybe that's why UFOs or extraterrestrials aren't coming to visit us, is because maybe we're not ready for that yet.
Yeah. And this was interesting too, is it's stages. It's learning how to talk about these things in stages to people. And I think when I first started becoming aware of a lot of things, especially from the angle of the government and the economic policies, and how just war and history and all of these things, like how they all factor together. And there's this tendency, I think, to initially want to just bombard everyone. You want to just like rip the Band-Aid off. You just want to pull the sunglasses off people and be like, don't you see what's going on?
Yeah, you want to come up to them and tell them, don't you see what's going on?
And it's almost like you like the shock factor. Like there's a little bit like I wish I had Spock's mind meld technology and just like walk around to random people in the mall and just like slap my hand on their face, and then they would start convulsing, and then oh my god, like, they would know everything that's going on. But that would just be, it would be wrong. It would be wrong to impress that. That's like going to how is that any different from going to a 7-year-old kid and just dropping like, here's all the problems you're going to deal with, and here's what's going on. He's 7. He doesn't need to know this crap right now. And so there's a process, and everybody's process is a little different, but it's taking your time and stages to figure it out and talk about it and bring it out to people. But the one even today though, like everything is still figuring out. How I felt like a month ago or 2 months ago is radically different, perhaps in some small way today, over something, and it's all about that perspective. So like you said about the UFO thing with ETs coming here, and a lot of people not being ready for that. A lot of people aren't really, as much as I want that to be something right now, and just. As much as I want to be there, that'd be really difficult for certain people to accept with their belief structures and their fear structure too, because of all the propaganda and all that crap. So there's a lot of fear associated with
a lot of people think right off the bat of gray aliens, the big eyes, the big scary abductions and things like that. That's what most people think of. And even when I brought it up to my own mom around Christmas, she said basically, I don't want to be around for that. I don't want to have to deal with if aliens are coming, I don't want to be around for that. And I think that maybe a lot of people kind of feel that way, you know.
I think the key word is that. What is that? What is that to your mom? I don't want to be around for that. What is she seeing? Because everybody has something you think about.
Yeah, exactly.
If I were to say, oh, blah, 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 the Chinese are going to invade the West Coast, and there's going to be a mental image that forms in your mind. You might see them ransacking, the Santa Monica Pier. Other people might see San Francisco, whatever it is, but everyone's going to see different things and what that means for them. So your mom, when you say, if you were to say, extraterrestrials are going to start mingling with our society in the next year or two, she sees something in her mind, and she doesn't know whatever that is. She doesn't want to be around for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the public probably feels that way when they think aliens. First of all, they don't think of ET and cute aliens and beings of love or angels or whatever. They think of the scary stuff first. They think of the alien invasion movie. They think of Battle of LA or whatever. And so that's why I think the idea that I got from Ancient Aliens that I never considered before is what's to differentiate, say, angels from extraterrestrials? How do you know they're not the same thing, just given a different name? And it comes down to a vocabulary issue with people.
Or an interpretation. It's essentially an interpretation over time of myth, legend, mythos turning into religion, turning into whatever it could be in that culture. They essentially feel that these stories that could be passed down, normal human beings can be given divinity, given deity, like godlike powers, whatever. I mean, you've got the Epic of Gilgamesh, essentially playing itself out through the Mediterranean for thousands of years prior to, a lot of people adapting that story. It's an issue of people adapting to whatever they want to believe and what they've been taught to believe. It's just like the UFO or the ET phenom. It's a want to believe. And like anything, you can show somebody proof, but they still have to want to believe in it. So if you can tell everybody all day that there's millions of cosmic entities out there, that there's, energetic beings, that there's physical beings, that there's light beings, that there's malevolent forces, that there's benevolent forces, good, bad, all these things, but they always want proof. They always want some type of proof in the pudding, and that's what you're always going to run into, especially with older generations. And when you start to talk about the metaphysics of meditation and spirituality, I mean, they can relate to spirituality on the level of going to church, or, perhaps having an experience where maybe it was near death, maybe it was seeing the birth of their kids, something like that. Maybe they can relate to those experiences. But as far as expanding their consciousness, it's tougher to talk to certain generations about it because to them, their whole life was built upon something that they didn't have access to a lot of this information. It was X, Y, and Z, and that's it. It's you worked at a factory for 30 years, you bought a house, you grew old, you died. Hopefully within that time, you maybe had some kids, you sent them off to college, and you bought some nice cars. That was life. That was the played out, life cycle for a lot of people for years. When that starts to change, just like if you start to bring up the fact of like replicator technology and changing what jobs would be obsolete and what things would go away. And I mean, can you imagine telling a 55-year-old mechanic that someday, hey, you'll never have to work again because there will be things that will just be reproduced?
Yeah, difficult.
I mean, how do you assimilate a society that has been so used to doing a process or doing some type of a job or a trade for compensation, because that's what we've built everything upon, a society built upon that. So I know I'm getting a little off topic there, but going back to the belief thing,
but
people
for people
have to want
who
to
don't
believe.
know really quick what a replicator it supposedly is, if it exists at all, is I think of it as like a a giant microwave that sits in your kitchen. It can make anything. It can make anything out of the matter of the universe. Yeah. And if you want to make a wrench, you can just program it to make a wrench, and it downloads a wrench file from the internet, and it prints out a real wrench. If you want to make a plate of food, you can make a plate of food out of it.
It's like 3D. I mean, you already
3D
have 3D
scanners.
Printers. You have 3D scanners and printers right now, and those things are building things, at a millimeter level, but they're still using raw basic materials, almost in like a sloppy fashion. Like at the atomic level, it's the equivalent of building and like slapping like sloppy joes together. It's just like gross matter material being like slapped on top of another. But
and it's very slow.
And it's still a tedious process, and you can't do combinatory like combinations and like all kind. You can do great things, but it's still very it's like really early technology. But if you get down to the energetic level, like I don't know if replicators would work in. There's two different like ways I could envision them working. One would be at the element of just like being like a neutron. Like if you just had raw energy, and then because if you take a neutron and split it, you get a proton and electron. Like they're the same thing. They're made from a neutron. So you just take raw cosmic energy and you repurpose it and direct it in the way you need. And so you use protons and electrons, and you spin up atoms. So you can just manifest and create atoms and line those up, and you've got a product. Or it could be more of the way that Preston, just one interview is like I've listened to, it's like Preston Nichols, and he talks about the Montauk Project, and that's where you had all of the basically like the mind control technologies of the CIA, and like they had all kinds of crazy stuff that they were playing with, and they had this chair that they could then you could hook a psychic into, and whatever he thought of, his thought energy as like a cosmic energetic pattern could create and manifest objects. Like if they concentrated hard enough on an object, they could manifest a wrench, because it would, just like in your dream, when you have a lucid dream and you could manifest objects, it's no different. It just required a tremendous amount of energy. But I don't know if is like, so you could have something that's more technical, like a replicator that's building something, like you said, like with a computer where you just download a template and it just creates it. Or you could have something that's more of like almost like a conscious computer that is coupled with you. So like as you think something, you say to it, like Siri, like a super advanced version of Siri, where you could say, I need a banana, and a computer then uses your intentions of what you need, and it does something similar where it manifests out of like the ether, out of the like cosmic space, and it just creates this banana. But yeah, that technology would just completely revolutionize every aspect of your society. Like nothing would be untouched by that.
Yeah, pretty much.
One of the points that one of the things I like that you said, Jason, you started talking about how everybody has like their own form of proof, and everybody's looking for proof for like things that are going on and things that they want to experience. And it does bring me to I think one of the key aspects of a lot of this type of information that comes out is this whole subject of like what constitutes proof. And we take a lot of things for granted, like just in a sense of it's like a collective whole. Like you might go on, like I've never been to a lot of these countries, but I believe they exist, and I believe they exist solely on you could say the weight of other people saying it does. Like, but I don't know. I haven't been there. I'm just taking it as, it has to be true because millions of other people say it's true, and show me these pictures and show this on a map. So I think it's true. So that you have that collective energy, and that's interesting. I think like you have collective energy that can shift and pool, and suddenly something becomes true or not true based on what the collective thinks. And it takes you into, when you read things like Brave New World, 1984, and it's like society as a whole. If you manipulate society at a macro level, and you can, even with some of the ET stuff, if you put out 20 movies that are basically saying alien invasions are going to come and they're horrible, they're going to kill you all, that conditioning, that programming has a huge effect on the macro picture, the macro level of how people perceive something, perceive the reality.
Absolutely, yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, one thing I was going to just add on with that, I feel a lot of the times too, for as much of a negative picture that puts out there with, a lot of the invasion type films and things like that, unfortunately, we're talking about studios that look at making money. They're looking at selling tickets and putting asses in seats, essentially. So what film is going to sell more? A film with guns and explosions and cool ships and stuff like that? Or a film about a race coming down and helping out clean up pollution or helping out expanding consciousness? That film is not going to sell the same as another film that is like Battlefield LA. And again, you may have a small market that can hit where people will say, oh, this was a great film, I really enjoyed this. And if done well, if done correctly, perhaps it could do well. But again, look at a film like Avatar. You essentially have Jurassic Park meets Dances with Wolves. So you've got a lot of crazy action. You've got this peacefaring race on this planet that they go to, and they just want to, be one with this collective, symbiont organism within their home world. But we can't just have a film about some explorers going there and meeting them. Instead, we need conflict, because that is what people will go to see.
It's a reflection, though, of our current environment.
Exactly. But the reason that the environment is that way is because that's what sells. Now, if things were to change, let's say over a period of 50 years, and those films are not doing as well, and the films about consciousness and relaxation and meditation and things like that do start to sell, you bet your ass they'll start making movies like that. But right now, it's about making money. And the money that will be made is in conflict. You have a smaller market. You have a smaller market of films that are made that fall into that line of that make you think a little bit harder. And again, those films don't necessarily get your big blockbuster budgets and whatnot, because again, those aren't going to put in the most money. They need something that 13 to 18-year-old demographic is going to go see, and they don't want to see something that essentially tells them, look a little bit further. Look a little bit beyond this. Like a film like Inception, for example. Great subject matter, fantastic story, shot very well. Christopher Nolan does a great job with it. That film was a little bit outside of the mold of what they thought it was going to do as far as what the budget that was allocated for it and then the money that it made, because it wasn't your necessary, like superhero blockbuster. It wasn't, it was discussing a subject about dreams and dreams within dreams that people sometimes will look at that and just go, look, I had to think too much. I didn't enjoy that movie.
Okay, that's true, but it is this reflection of that environment, right? And you could, just as much as everything is constantly in motion, and nothing is ever static. So you could say, well, right now,
exactly right now, that's what I'm talking about.
The 13 to 18-year-old range, that movie, you could say, let's just say Inception is too complicated for them. The majority of them, that's way too complicated.
Just a generalization, right?
Yeah. But they're still in motion. So they're going to go either more this way or that way. So to some people, some 14, 15-year-old kids saw Inception and it blew the doors open. It opened their minds, and it's shifted the energy of, let's say, that collective, where a few of them are now going, okay, and they're thinking deeper about issues. And to other ones, they're like, no, I'm not going to, this is way too complicated for me. But you're still, with Inception, you maybe pull like this ocean a little bit to the right, whereas if you put out just a ridiculous crap movie that you could say totally panders to that market, and it's just got some TNA, and it's got some like violence and just stupid crap, and it's funny, you could say, oh, that swings it to a little bit more to the left. And if you were to like pump out an Inception every year and stick it right in that age range over a period of 10 years, it might radically alter, and suddenly they're all appreciating more of those movies. But to the contrary, if you were to give them a Jersey Shore feature every year, then it might bring it even further down, where you're like, suddenly the 13 to 18 range is now like, oh, you got to make stuff that like would be satisfactory for a 9 to 12-year-old or something. Like it's constantly in motion. It's constantly moving. I totally forgot where I was going to go with this. But
well, I kind of think that's cool, kind of a cool direction that District 9 took. It was a little bit more of a flip-flop.
Yeah. It did. It
played with both. It played with both.
Yeah, it touched in a lot of different ways, and it makes you think about things. And like that movie we were watching some of these movies, it's horrible. Some of these movies are horrible, and you would go, oh, okay, this movie sells. Because it has this generic human conflict. The most human conflict ever. Or not ever, but one of the most human conflicts we have is survival, dude. Just, oh crap, you're out in the middle of the jungle and some dude with a machete is trying to kill you. Oh crap, you and your friends went out to a cabin and some psycho dude's going to try to shoot bows and arrows at you all weekend. Like it just oh, now you got to survive. You don't need any good characters, and that's why you see so many of these movies. They're easy to make and they sell because they tug at you.
They tap into that
at
primal,
a very animal. Yeah, they tap into that like primal energy beneath you. But I still think it's also easy to say when you talk about movies, and I know you don't mean it in a negative way, but you're like, oh, a movie about like meditation, or just a movie about them coming down and helping this environment. I think there are movies like that, and they do have conflict, and they're very good. Like if I think of just like a simple drama, like even like a movie like Powder. Or something. It was a good movie, or a movie like Phenomenon with Travolta and stuff.
Yeah.
Like the conflict it doesn't mean that there's no conflict. Like conflict could be primal, but I think you can also, like District 9, it does have primal conflict, but it also has I think what makes the movie rewatchable, and the reason I watched the movie like 5 times, is because it's not just, oh, dude got this virus and now his arm's like all ganky like a lobster and people are trying to kill him. If it was just that, you'd kind of half-ass watch it while you were playing ping pong or something like that. But because it has this additional conflict, the deep, it tugs at you at like, it starts tugging at you like higher up, like intellectually it starts playing with you, and you get more engrossed by all of that. I think that's why District 9 was so successful, because it is a hybrid. It tackles the primal, but it also tackles the intellectual. So I think like you could still like I think it is important to try with movies, like especially science fiction, is finding that middle ground where you have something that's action orientated, but you also like have the intellectual challenge. You have that additional like higher, that's something to reach for, where you do step a little bit out of your box, and it's not. But if you go too cerebral, like Inception, I love Inception, but
I think that was like the perfect mix. At least for me, it was. It was a perfect mix. It wasn't. It was far enough. It was enough of a challenge for me to watch, and I had to pay attention.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too challenging, and it wasn't too boring or predictable either.
Yeah.
So.
But I do agree with Jason that it did have some issues with getting getting butts in the seat, because it didn't appeal that much to kids in high school, and
it's tough because
a lot of just like a certain class of people, like a certain types of people, just were not interested in seeing that movie.
I mean, we can use the word class, or we can even use the word majority. Like, because again, when they look at the numbers, when their CPAs, when their CFOs are looking at everything, they're looking at the majority. What is the broadest spectrum we can hit? We can use music as another analogy. You know, when you always talk about artists that started off doing their original sound, and they had this great sound that they first started with, and then, you know, you'll hear people say, oh, they sold out, man. They went pop. They did this. They went pop. And then they sound like everybody else, or they kind of don't sound like their old stuff, and their old stuff is so good. Well, the reason that they go pop, the reason that they do this is because when marketing executives get a hold of them, when the people that have the decisions to make a lot of money get a hold of them, they go, okay, we can look at this pie chart and we can make 25%, or we can flip this around and we can make 85%, and we can go with the majority here. So essentially, a lot of people will, to use the term again loosely, you know, sell out. They'll sell out that way because they want to hit a larger market. Now, some people stay true.
That's like making a PG-13 Die Hard movie.
Exactly. Oh, God, exactly.
Man.
God, how can Die Hard be PG-13? Come on, man. John McClane. Okay. It's got to be R all day.
The tagline of the movie has the F word in it. So, so that's a perfect example of what you're talking about too, in movies at least.
Terrible. I mean, and like Geoff had mentioned earlier, you know, when you do have more people making a conscious shift to be more informed, more educated, more aware of what's going on, I think that happens with not only a societal shift, but it happens with age and maturity and things like that. Because you could show me a movie. You could show me Inception 15 years ago, and I would have been like, oh, dude, cool movie. I liked it. It was cool. You show me the movie now, and I can read so much deeper into it. So, again, that's the age-old question of, you know, maturity always kind of tends to calm a mind a little bit, or sometimes make it a little crazier. But maturity can always bring a little bit more clarity with things. You have more life experiences to pull from. You have more intuition and more to back up your basis for comparisons on things that you've read or learned or just looked into on your own. You've had more of a journey yourself, so you can now backtrack and go, okay, I used to think like this. Now I think like this. I can see where this is going. You know, and if, you know, I don't know, maybe you guys can chime in on that. Like, I don't know how a society itself can grow as far as maturity goes when you're always going to have youth. That's just, you know, youth will always be there. But how do you have that maturity at a very young level? Is it having a better educated society overall? I mean, because I think that's a good thing.
I definitely think it's a social thing. I think of maybe I don't know. I think of maybe of like Buddhist monks, you know, little kids were meditating and were able to maybe, like what we were talking about, Geoff, achieving manipulation of matter or things like that from a very young age, and they grow up with a completely different view and take on things than somebody growing up in the inner city who likes Grand Theft Auto and likes potato chips and drinking and smoking weed. It's totally different things that they want when they hit like puberty. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're a product of your environment. You're
Very
programmed.
True.
Like
Very
there's that
true.
old. I don't know the exact friggin' saying, but it's something like it. I think it goes back to like how something people in church would say, but people would say, give me a kid when he's like 4 or 5 and he's mine. If I can program a mind from the age of like 4 years old to 5 years old, but until he's 15, I can do whatever I want with that kid, because you're basically. I mean, it is the way that I look at human beings, is we are biological computers. Mm-hmm. And it's just programming. You're just being loaded up with software from the time you're born to the time you're an adult. And depending on your environment, depending on your locale, depending on your parents and your friends and all these things that can come at you, you could be radically. You could be anything. It's like just open source software. You could be anything. You could be this creative, smart genius, or you could be this amazing football player, or you could be this horrible gangster, killing animals or something. I mean, it really depends on all those things. But I do think maturity and awareness are two different things that I've been like seeing. Like, so even with, I feel it's almost a mistake to say a child can't be mature, because I've just read about just reading these kids in Tibet and just anywhere, just you meet kids all the time who are very mature and also very aware of what's going on, and I think it does definitely have something to do with spirituality, I feel, and the age of their soul. Some people are much younger souls, and it could be a 70-year-old man, and he's much younger. He's still learning.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about in a reincarnation kind of
in a reincarnation concept. He's still a baby. He's a 75-year-old man, but he's a baby, maybe on a spiritual or more of a galactic level. But then you could have somebody else who's a 7-year-old kid who's lived 15,000 lifetimes. And by the time he's 20, he's got more wisdom than you could ever possibly imagine. So, and he might be more self-aware of what's going on in his environment and paying attention to certain things. And it might have very little to do, and this is where I could counter-argue and say it might have very little to do with his environment.
Mm-hmm. I think definitely everything factors into everything. You could still stick, like you're saying, the very wise soul, who's lived a lot of lifetimes in a very environment that would not create somebody mature, like you were saying, and they would still be fine. They might be fine. They might be not be fine. I don't know.
It's a challenge, and I got that. The biggest thing I've gotten from reading when I read about spirituality is that at a soul level you crave challenge. And it doesn't mean that people who are having relaxing lives are lazy. You might have had the lifetime prior to this. You might have had the most ridiculous, crazy, most challenging life over the last 1,000 lifetimes you've lived. Maybe this lifetime for you is a breather, and you just need to chill out, and you need to gather yourself, and you're going to be a beach bum. But that at a soul level, you can't be judged. Then you can't say, "Oh, this person's a lazy bum." No, you have no idea what that person has been through in other lifetimes. But
when I first heard that concept of reincarnating and taking on different challenges in each lifetime that you live, I immediately thought of video games, because for me, when I play through a video game the first time, like a single player story-driven game, I like to play on hard mode right off the bat because I want it to be a challenge. I want to work for it. But sometimes I don't want to work for it. I just want to sit down and I just want to have fun and do it. And it just depends on what I want to do. Sometimes I'll turn on the God mode code and all the weapons code and just run around and just blow shit up. And other times I want a challenge. I want to only be given a knife, and I want to sneak around and try and really challenge myself. So I really like that idea of different lifetimes.
Variety.
That you pick them when you're outside of this reality, and you come back. You pick different challenges you want to take on.
Yeah. And it's all about just growth and experience and learning. It's no different. And this is this goes right into the holographic model of the universe. So as above, so below. And so if people, I think you get some backlash when you try to anthropomorphize things and attribute human-like qualities to it. But I don't think... I think the mistake is saying that it's human-like. And I think it's more that it's conscious. You could say, well, what would consciousness do? Because before you're human, you're consciousness. So at that more of a core level, this is what consciousness does. So think of what consciousness does here on Earth in human biological computers. So then, as above, so below, that's what consciousness does elsewhere. So the same way you like variety, the same way you appreciate challenge. You don't want to go if you're playing football, it's you want a challenge. If you're going to play any kind of sport, you want a challenge. for the most part. Like it's part of, you could say, human nature, or I could say that's consciousness. That's the nature of consciousness, is to want a challenge. And so I also think that does, even with that relaxing life, the same way you might. I've just finished working on a movie for 4 months, and I'm going to take a week off. Okay, you're taking a week off could be the equivalent of, man, as consciousness, I've just had like 10 wicked lifetimes, and I'm going to take a few of them off. I'm going to take a few lifetimes off. I need a breather. I'm just going to relax a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with being relaxing and just enjoying the ride. And I think you see that. You could look at people around the world and they're like, so-and-so over there is just chilling out, having a great time. And you might see that. You might be like, that's great that they're just enjoying their life. Whereas the guy sitting next to you might be thinking in his mind that this guy's such a bum. And it's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's like thinking, I want to, I got so many things I want to do. So many, whatever those goals are, whether they're, life achievements or monetary, or, they want to have a family or whatever their goals are. And they look at this guy who's just backpacking a country and living on, on the road or whatever, and has no possessions and has no cares in the world, really.
Yeah.
Two very different perspectives.
I think that's what, like, another thing I've gotten just from a lot of those readings is, like, most people look at Earth as a school, but Earth is a very interesting school, and it's not ego. It's not the ego of out of millions of planets. Oh, okay, Earth is important, but apparently there's not many planets that have free will, that have as much variety as this planet has to offer, in terms of flexibility. And there's so many different challenges you could take on here, as consciousness, at a spiritual level, at a soul level. There's so many different things you could do, that it is very unique. There's not many places like this right now, in the universe, where you can do that. Because most places, if you think about all the crazy shit that's allowed on this planet, with, like, wars and, like, just getting into that, like, just think about, like, war and death and murder and, like, greed and all these really dark alleys for you to explore, coupled with the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
You can have these, like, wonderful lives that have nothing to do with any of this stuff. You could have a simple life living on a ranch in Colorado, on a farm, where you just relax, read, and work with the land and the animals all day. You could have, like, the most relaxing, amazing life there, just relaxing, just hanging out. Or you could have the most chaotic, scary nightmare, living in some of these countries that are, like, you don't know if, like, you're walking down the street, if you're going to get, like, gunned down by an AK-47, or some people just aren't going to like. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The options you have here. So I like that. The video game thing, though, is great that you brought up. The video game analogy is a really good way to talk about some of this stuff with people, especially when you get into the nature of reality and you start talking about it, like, from, like, a holographic perspective.
Even from a physical design aspect, as a guy who's done a little bit of game design in his youth, working with game engines, seeing how 3D, like, first person shooters are built and the way the engines work. You kind of there was a paper I remember I read a long time ago that I think I've sent both of you guys at some point, that explained the parallels between our universe and a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, like, so many great analogies in there about the way things work in physics. And even recently, I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about that one of his colleagues had found a type of error correction.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call it? Coding.
Yeah, like error correction. Like, when you do, there's some kind of, like, code.
What's the
it's like
what's
in
the
the
word I'm thinking
machine
of?
code language where
found in the physics of our universe. It's like something self-correcting code found in the physics of our reality. That's something that we made in a computer to do web searches or whatever. And that's just kind of a mind-blowing idea.
Yeah. My God.
That was deep.
That's so.
That was very deep.
You did.
There was another point, too, I was going to bring up about earlier when we were talking about movies. With life experiences, going through more experiences and getting different viewpoints on things is The Matrix. Having kind of gone through a kind of a personal awakening or a different or a view shift of reality in the last year, just like Geoff has, watching The Matrix again, see the entire thing in a completely different way. And the same thing is also true for the directors of the movie themselves, which they've said in recent interviews for Cloud Atlas. They've said that they've gone back and watched their movies and they've seen things that even they didn't realize they were putting into their own movie, and completely different perspectives that they never had before. And they're the ones who made the freaking movie. So, I don't know. I just found The Matrix to be really interesting.
It is.
To me
There's
lately.
a lot of parallels.
Yeah. There's a lot. I think it's one of the best most important pieces of art and entertainment we've had in a long time, just because of the fact that it is a blockbuster action, hacker movie, but it's also a very philosophical movie, a very, big picture, view analysis of reality. What is reality?
It makes you think. It makes you think beyond traditional just thinking.
Yeah.
Like you expand, and that's like another big reason we wanted to do this is you get in these conversations with people, and even the ones we've had with each other, where it's a constant, just saying much, and I love to ramble, I'm so good at this.
Pulling out the
rambling.
tangents.
But when we're working out, we're talking about working out like challenges, right? When you're working out, it's like you have like a partner, somebody there who's like kind of pushing you along, but even you're in your own way, there's that sense of you constantly, you're raising the bar, but you can't go from curling 30 pounds to suddenly curling 80 pounds. You just can't do it. Like you got to slowly work your way up. And with each little like conversation, or each time you're rewatching The Matrix, let's say you just rewatched it every month, but in between that, in the interim, you were reading on different topics. You would see the reflection, like, oh, now I've read about, occult symbolism, so now I'm starting to see something. Or I've read about like parallel realities or the nature of time. So if you start to read about space-time, time-space, then all of a sudden you have different interpretations of this. If you read about déjà vu and like study it, then you have a different appreciation, a different perspective on some of the things that are happening in the movie. And another thing that has helped me tremendously is there are certain things I've rewatched many times, like that David Icke thing that we watched, the first one, The Lion Sleeps No More.
Yeah.
That was the first time I watched it. I forget when that was, but like I kind of got it. I'm more so talking because he talked about so much stuff. But when he talks about the nature of reality, how reality works, the whole wave particle, and how reality is holographic, and how it's coupled with your own consciousness, and you are creating your reality. All of those notions, and like the biological computer. That was like some of my first exposure to these ideas in a like just absorbable fashion. In other ways, like I'd heard things in passing, or I'd read little excerpts online about things, but it was seeing enough of the puzzle pieces together at once and then putting them together into an image. But I still, I watched it like 2 or 3 times over like a period of 6 months. And it wasn't until the third time with whoever I was watching that first part with, I really started to understand it. And I really started to see how it worked. And it wasn't as simply as memorizing like a script or memorizing something. It's nothing like that. And this is where, like Jason, when you mentioned earlier, is your intuition. Your intuition is the most powerful thing we have. It's the most powerful thing that you possess. And it's not your ability to understand something, I think, is like a dynamic like connection right to your intuitive processing, and it goes beyond just typical, like you could say, like typical brain processing is what allows you to do mathematics or memorize something, but your intuitive processing is what allows you to understand a process, which is why you need to do things. It's one thing just to watch a YouTube video, it's another thing to perform an action. And it's not just muscle memory or synapses being rewired and laid like train track in your brain and you just remember how to do it. No, it's the understanding. And then once you understand something, you can perform it in any way you need to. And do you remember that guy who there's this linguist? It's one of those guys.
Oh yeah,
he's like but he can learn languages like that. Like boom, here's a language. You got to learn it, and give him a week or two. He will understand the proper syntax. He'll understand or like just like the structure of how the words are used and phonetically and I don't even know if I'm using the right friggin' terms, but within a week or two, this guy can speak any language, and it's not because he's not memorizing everything. What he's understanding is his intuition is helping him to understand how it works. Because once he knows how it works, you can just do just about anything. Just like it would be easy for me to build this structure we're in if I just followed a plan, right? I could follow the plan and go, oh, I could build this. I'll put this door here. I'll learn about drywall and put all these studs in here. But if I just learn how to be a builder, and if I learn all of the fundamental concepts and I understand them, now I can build this. But then after this, I can go build something bigger, better. And after that, I can go build this and that and this and that and this and that and bigger and you can start getting very creative, and you're not inhibited by just the traditional template.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's like a difference between like template thinking, where people think like a template, and it's just memorizing a process.
Yeah, it's easier to think that way. It's easier to do it that way. So it's hard for us to change our gears.
But I think we can all do that. And I think we all do it in small ways, and we're starting to. But that goes back to the programming and how you've been brought up. So, like you were talking earlier about factory, like, oh, guys working in the factory, what do they expect? Okay, I just stamp, sheet metal, or I just pour lead, or whatever I do. It's a repetitive mechanical process. And you get shit when I'm editing, like even today, I'm just sitting there relinking media clips, right? It's a mechanical process. I'm basically just a little computer. I can have, I can have a podcast or an interview going, or a book on tape, and I'm just sitting there for hours just doing a repeatable action for 4 or 5 hours, and it's just a memory thing. And there's nothing creative about it. There's nothing intuitive about it.
After you do it like maybe 6 or 7 times, at least for me, it's like 6 or 7 times. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's memorized in my body, and it just kind of does it.
You just perform the actions.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a subconscious thing now.
Yeah.
But once you and this is why I think, and I always appreciated this and I'm very self-taught in all the software I've ever learned, and it's because I would do a few tutorials and I would see what they were doing. I would pay attention. I would pay specific attention to the tools they were using and how they were using them. And I tried to avoid just trying to memorize their process. I was just saying, well, what are they using this for? How are they doing this? And then, because once I understood that, I could understand the software. So when I was in high school, I could learn all this freaking software because all I had to do was, like this guy learning the language. I just got to figure out the code.
I think the guy you're talking about is called David Wynn Miller. Is that right?
No, that's the quantum syntax grammar dude.
But he was talking about, like you're saying, learning languages really fast from the way he looks at them.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his own. Like, that guy has like a photographic memory, and he also has very strong intuitive capabilities, like intuitive processing. So I think that's why he's able to do that. But there's this guy. He's a Swedish guy. He's a Swedish or Icelandic. He learned Icelandic in a week, or something like that. And he went on television. Like, somebody challenged him to learn Icelandic.
I heard that's like the hardest language to learn difficult. Or something, right?
And he went away, and you could say, "Oh, he's lying." He knew it all along. Whatever. Where's the proof? Where's the truth? Again, if you want to believe it, you can, or it's really up to you at that point. But regardless, I mean, it's pretty fascinating. I remember watching him. It was just fascinating how he could do that. But it's not. And there's all kinds of cool stuff. Like there's that guy who can look out of the airplane and just. Boom! I just need to look for like 5 seconds, and then he can draw the whole city. He'll draw like a 80-inch by 200-inch like giant. It'll be like totally accurate, down to the windows and like the levels of every building.
What did he have? He was autistic, or
he was autistic,
a savant. That's what it was.
Yeah. And now the term savant is used for people that typically have a type of disorder like autism, and they have exceptional mathematical computation skills. I mean, they're essentially almost like human computers in a way, with exorbitant numbers like 15,000 times 267,138. They'll rattle it off like that. So yeah, and I don't know if the word or the term savant is typically just used in correlation with somebody who has autism, but can you use the word savant with anybody? Like if you have a extraordinary ability? I don't know. I'm not sure,
but
I did see.
Away, because you have people who have well, and this goes into what David Icke talks about too. I don't think it's not that you have these people who are savants and look at them, they've been just miraculously they have this skill set. I think everyone has the capability to do those things. And there was another fascinating story I read or came across, I don't remember the guy's name, but it was somebody who thought it was fascinating how people who would memorize number sequences and like memorizing decks of cards and all that kind of stuff. And there's like tournaments, there's competitions. And this guy was just he was just a journalist, a writer, and he was following around some people who did this stuff. And he got interested in it, so he started practicing with, hey, what's your formula? How do you do this? Started programming his mind. And took him about a year or two, and then he started winning competitions. And he could because it just, if you want to throw the energy at it, if you want to put the right energy into getting something done, you can do that. It's just time, and time is nothing more. Time is just energy. So throw the energy at it, and you can do that. My buddy, I just posted this gorgeous short that I just put on my Facebook that, my buddy Wes back in Chicago.
Oh,
he
yeah.
He wants to do like an animated short, and this one that Disney just put out, it just looks gorgeous, and it's a blend of hand-drawn animation with CG animation, and it looks just gorgeous. And
wow.
It's just black and white, beautiful. And his comment was, and I did it without even thinking, and he said, "Oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I knew how to do that." And I said, "Me too. I wish I knew how to do that too." But I shouldn't have said that, because if I want to do that, it's not that I wish I could just, it would be great if I miraculously could snap my fingers and have that capability. It simply
If
energy.
you want to put the work into it.
If I want to know how to do that,
do it.
I could drop everything I'm doing right now. I could stop working on that movie, stop doing everything. And I could just start loading up After Effects tutorials and how they did this, and start looking into animation tutorials, start drawing, I could do that. It's just the energy. Do you want to throw the energy into figuring out how to do that and get it done? But see, I totally just derailed our conversation there.
Now I hear a buzzing. I was just trying to figure out, we're still working the kinks out of this podcast. I hear like a woo.
Oh, that was my phone.
Okay, so it was someone's phone ringing.
Yeah,
but
I can't even hear it. I'm half deaf.
okay. There's like a lot of buzzing and from the lights and things in here. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something that I was doing.
No, it was my phone.
All right. The audio engineer in me is, feels very guilty when there's a buzzing noise in the recording.
I know you're a
professional. This guy's a professional.
I was going to say perfectionist, but you are a professional.
Trying to nail both of those aspects, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Where were we talking about that I got totally sidetracked on this? And this is just going to happen a lot.
That's fine.
I know.
That's how real conversations. That's how they really go, though.
I'm fabulous at just going off on tangents.
It's good. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about? I mean, we have another maybe 7 minutes left. Otherwise, we can keep going.
What are we doing? An hour today?
Yeah, we're at an hour right now.
Okay.
Or 52 minutes right now.
Yeah, I think we covered a few topics here today, from what the influences are, things that we've essentially kind of researched on our own and delved into on our own, just in our own time and our own questions and feelings, whether it be through not agreeing with the status quo or just feeling that whatever is being fed to us is the proverbial bullshit spoon being shoved in your mouth, and you just have to take it. And each one of us kind of has searched throughout the time of just questioning and wondering and just digging a little bit deeper, and that can cover a lot of different things. It can cover a lot of it can cover the way that the monetary system is set up, the way that jobs are set up, the way that relationships are set up, the way that it can cover a lot of different topics. And that's what's nice about this Cosmic Sandbox. You bounce around on things and you have fun with it, and and there will be conflict and conversation and argument, and that's a very normal part of the process too, because I don't think you can have conversation without some type of a minor amount of conflict.
Challenge.
Yeah, you're going to have different views, you're going to have different angles, you're going to agree to disagree, and that's fine. You are always trying to make connections with people, and essentially I think we as human beings are always not just trying to connect, but we're trying to get our points across as well. You know, you want somebody to understand you. You want them to see your side of things. And a true sign of intelligence, this was a quote that I read a long time ago. You know how everybody's always got like a cool, awesome quote they leave at the end of their footnote of their email, you know, like you always got that friend that does that.
Yeah.
But it said a true sign of intelligence is somebody that can take an idea that isn't their own and they can still listen to it and they can still absorb it and digest it. And they don't have to necessarily accept it.
Absolutely.
But they can listen to it and they can say, "Huh, you know, that's a different perspective on things. You know, I didn't think of it that way." And you can either agree or disagree with it. But you know, the minute you just shoot it down and say, "Oh, well, that's fucking garbage," well, then you're being closed off. Then you're just saying, "Oh, well, yeah, forget it." Then you know.
Yeah, you're basically entrenching yourself into a certain state of mind.
Yeah,
And
you're throwing a wet blanket
really
over
grow
everything.
From that. It's very difficult to grow from that. And
That-
that's something you're up against. That's part of the resistance is how do you approach in what's interesting there's a couple good things I heard earlier this morning, or just like thoughts that bounce around. It's like, and this goes back to our initial thing of, you know, some people aren't ready for things when you want to talk to them about it. But if somebody doesn't, you can put something down in front of somebody. You could lay down, if you want to say it's proof or whatever. You could show somebody something. If they want to, they can either look at it or they can look away, and they could stay where they're at. And there's nothing wrong with that. If people don't want to, if the people aren't ready for certain information, they just want to pretend it's not going on. That's fine.
I just want to interject real
that.
quick on that and say another thing too that I feel that we run into, especially with older generations like our parents and whatnot, and people that have been in this humdrum, this mindset of this is exactly where this is going. I'm going to use computers and technology as an example. Okay, text messaging, webcams. You know, things that we today are using on an everyday basis. You know, teenagers are using them even more readily. I mean, I've read statistics that say that, you know, children are becoming more and more illiterate due to the fact that they don't write enough and they're not writing correctly, and their communication skills are falling off because they're not communicating back and forth better. They're using these
Is it better or
devices. These devices are essentially connecting them that. Is it connection? That's completely subjective. That's
Yeah,
completely subjective point. But the point I'm trying to make with it with the older generations is these devices can help them. They can help them in connecting with people, connecting with family members, connecting to other people, connecting to finding out times of movies, finding out if these groceries are available, finding out if this product is available. But they are so set in their ways of doing things the way that they've done them, they are afraid to change, or they feel that what they've already got going, because we all know this, as you get older, a lot of people will typically tend to get in a certain mindset and they don't want to learn more things. They're like, look, I've gotten this far, I don't want to learn more. And that's not everybody. This is a small percentage, again, of people that will just tell themselves, hey, I've already got to worry about my mortgage, my property taxes, my kids. My kid's got a kid on the way. I'm worried about retirement now. I got a 401k. You stack all of these things up. We've had these discussions before. How, with all of these things that are going on within their world and in their minds, do they have time to stay on top of the political race, to stay on top of any type of a spiritual awakening, on top of any type of a, you know, change? And the system that built those walls and confined them in within that did a very, very good job of that. Did a very, very good job of building this proverbial igloo around them where they only have a small window to crawl out of every day. Maybe it's that 16 minutes in between coming home before their kids get home from school. Maybe it's that half an hour when they lay down with their wife and they're checking their iPad for certain things. But if you haven't developed the skills over time to question and want to search out more knowledge, you won't. I feel that you won't. You will essentially continue with your cycle, and no offense to anybody, but ignorance is bliss in that way. Ignorance is bliss. You essentially continue with your cycle. You let it happen. You let it be what it is. And you just say, hey, I'm working and I'm paying the bills. Hey, I'm working and paying bills. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that said that. And I just wonder, isn't there more than that sometimes?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound too, granola, not shaving my armpits, hugging trees or anything like that. And no offense to folks that do that. But, working and paying bills is an essential part of life in the format that we have laid out. But there are also questions that you have to have, right? There have to be things that something must have popped up once and you go, that just doesn't sound right to me. And then when you maybe did a little bit of digging, a little bit of searching, you find, wow, that really doesn't sound right. Why is this even like this? Whether it be just studying ancient civilizations, studying, the way that your local government is set up, the way that your national government is set up, those are all questions that sometimes people are so ingrained in their everyday processes, they just don't want to let more water into the bowl.
They don't have time to deal with it. That article that you put up yesterday, I read that about your life has been
very
planned out
good.
for you.
Really
it was a
very
great
good
article, but it's very true. People don't have it, and I have been blessed because I have not had a 9-to-5 job for years. That is the only reason that I had the time to do this.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what that guy says in the beginning. That's exactly what that guy says in the beginning. Remember when he said, I had so much more time to take personal time, go for walks, read books, meditate. And he said, yeah, I definitely had a lot less money. I had a lot less money when I was doing these things. But then when I went back into the grain of doing the 45 to 60 hours a week, then I had more money, but I didn't have that personal satisfaction, that personal gratification. So you are constantly sacrificing what you have available and what is at your fingertips to, are you playing the game of keeping up with the Joneses? Hey, they just bought a new house and a new car, and if I don't do this and do that, I won't have those nice things, and I won't have this, and I won't have that. Whereas, going back to what Matt said earlier, what makes you happy with what you have? Are you happy enough with what you have? The guy that just goes backpacking across Europe, and the guy that just, he's living out of his backpack for 30 days, and sure, he doesn't have the greatest place to sleep in. He's not staying at the nicest hotels and eating at the nicest restaurants, but it's the journey that he's taking, and perhaps it's a personal awakening for him. Maybe that's an eye-opening experience of seeing how people interact and seeing how people treat him or her in that case. That is the kind of thing that happens when you have so much of your life just smothered with a have to. There's a great line in a film with Steve Martin. I think it's Parenthood. I think the movie is called Parenthood. He's basically an older guy. He's in his late 40s, or I think he's supposed to be playing late 40s, early 50s, but he's essentially getting ready to retire. And he's coming down to, he's in the home stretch now. He's happy, life's kind of going good. He's got one kid who's kind of got a problem, and he's trying to do the family thing as best as he can, and he's playing the baseball head coach and whatnot, and he's doing all this, and the wife tells him, hey, by the way, I know you're getting ready to retire. I know business isn't great. I'm pregnant again, and we might have another child. Granted, they're in their late 40s. This is a little unheard of at this point as well. He's thinking about the cruising years of life, where she's thinking about another 18 of, some time coming up. I'm getting to my point here. Essentially, they have this dialogue sequence where she tells him, why can't you help me on this? Like, why do you have to look at things in life of everything being like, just like you have to do this? And he literally turns around with a very stern look on his face and just says, my whole life is have to. And a lot of people feel that way because you're put into debt at a very early age.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up a minute ago is you have this debt. As much as I would like to go backpack in Europe somewhere for 3 months, I got bills to pay. I got school loans and I got...
Yeah, it sucks, man.
Yeah, I can't just pick up and go like that.
Yeah.
Most people can't pick up and go. Most people can't take a month off to give their mind a breather, read some books, change their perspective on things.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a great line because he just looks and he says, my whole life is have to. And imagine at 21 years old, you've got a kid. And then I know a lot of people will have that scenario. And then at 25, you bought a house. And then at 30, you're 9 years into your job. And then, by 40, you got 20 years in and you got all this. You have these have tos that are building. They're building. They're all these have tos, these have tos, these have tos.
Responsibilities.
Yeah. And those are things that just keep building. And once those have tos get to a pinnacle point, you either just you're still on the raft ride down the rapids, or you eventually just fucking jump out.
Shrug your fucking shoulders.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. It's but again, a lot of that goes back to what we were talking about with people just not wanting to bring more in, whether it's your mom, Matt, saying, look, my life's good as it is. I don't want to deal with these other influences or these other possibilities coming in. My life is complicated enough as it is. I don't want to deal with that. That will be a very, very, very common response to any type of radical new age thinking of any kind of things. It'll just be, look, I don't want to deal with that. Just like computer. My grandmother looks at a computer and goes, I don't want to touch those things. I don't want to touch those things.
I think that is beautiful though. That you have all those opportunities. You have that the tolerance of a planet. Like if you could get to the point where, imagine if kids in 10 years from now are using teleporters. But you have people in their 30s and 40s maybe who are just deathly afraid of them. They're not going to...
Because they saw The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, wait, what happened? And they don't understand the technology. So maybe a 10-year-old kid might look at a teleporter and go, okay, I understand how this works. I understand like that it's a vortex energy that's going to break down my energetic frequency as just like a frequency, like an energetic transmission, and then rebuild it on the other side of the vortex, on the other side of the time. And a 40-year-old, 50-year-old man might be thinking, oh my God, you're going to break me down into little molecules and atoms, and if they don't understand the technology, there could be a lot of associated fear with the process. So they're like, I'm just not going to do that. And just like you have people today who refuse to fly, I'll only take trains, and they could still get there, but they're just not going to fly. So you could have some people who are just cool. Every day they use a little teleporter and they bounce from New York to LA or wherever they're going, or no problems going up in electrogravitic or anti-gravitic, disc craft and flying around or something. Whereas other people, that totally might freak them out.
Yeah.
And they don't know, what if it drops out of the sky? I don't want to go in. I'll take the train. I'll meet you there. I'll take the bullet train or the mag train underground or something. But they're just not going to want to do it. They're not going to want to teleport. They're not going to want to go out into space, and that's fine. Just as much as your grandma doesn't want to use your computer, that's fine. You're going to have the blending. You're going to have the merging of two worlds.
And I use that in a loose generalized term as well, because I do know some older folks that love using webcams and they love being able to connect and keep up with the times and things like that. I was just using mine as an example of.
But it's a good example.
She is basically not deathly afraid, but to her it's a very alien foreign device.
She doesn't need it, and it also just because of her lifestyle. Whereas I look at certain things and I'm like, I don't need certain things, or I do need certain things for my comfort because of my conditioning, because of my programming. And so you're always going to have a certain overlap, a certain merging of the worlds. You still do today. You have tribes in Africa, you have tribes in South America who don't even know, they have no idea what an iPhone is. They have no idea. You could try to explain to them maybe what the internet is, but they don't even know what a computer is. And
well, some of them have never even seen other races other than their own.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't seen a white person, an Asian person, a Mexican person. They've never seen this. They've been literally just.
That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, isn't that nuts to think about that certain people have never seen these other things, but they've been so not sheltered. I guess sheltered. Because of what their society is.
But it's just like. I would almost, and I don't mean, I'm not picking on it in the sense of like it was meant in a negative way, but like even just that term though, saying like something is sheltered, it's just they're in their own world. We're coexisting simultaneously in our own realities. They have, I mean, if you think about, imagine if you were in that tribe, you could think about it almost in like an Avatar sense where let's say you're a young man in that tribe. You're just waking up and you have things you have to do that day. Maybe you've got to do something for the village or get some fresh water, or you're gonna that today you're going out and you've been learning with somebody how to use a bow or how to use a spear or how to like do something. It's just it's just a different reality. Oh. It's a completely different reality, but you're coexisting on the same planet. You could interface and you could interact with that individual. If you could find some common language, and you could share stories and swap energies in that way.
You know what I think is really interesting? I remember reading this in a National Geographic a while back, but there are actually certain tribes in Africa that don't have the word can't in their vocabulary.
Oh, wow.
They don't have it. They don't know. So it's very interesting to me, especially when you talk about linguistics and societies, how they build their vocabulary, where you want to talk about Ebonics or classical English or Old English or whatever. There are certain words that we've developed due to where we're at in our society, but there are certain tribes that do not have the word can't in it. Now I'm sure they do have something else that shows apprehension, or possibly that if you told the guy to fly, maybe he would just use some type of a myth or a legend to talk about something. But if you asked one of us to say, well, we'll go fly, well, I can't fly. I can get in a vehicle and I can fly and I can do these flying things, but we have developed in our vocabulary, in our grammar, the word can't, the cannot. I cannot do this. Whereas there are some people out there that have never heard the word can't. Never even heard it. They don't even know how to associate it.
There's no concept in their mind.
Can't. What do you mean can't? So again, like I said, there's probably something within there that they do have another term for
Equivalent
that.
of that,
Yes,
yeah.
like, you know, because it'd be like, hey, dude, you know, go kill that lion with that spear. He'd be like, whoa.
What if he just laughs?
That's a bad idea. You know, that would be his version of can't. He's like,
idea.
he's like, that's a really bad idea. Instead of can't, it's such a bad idea. I'm gonna need some boys to go do this. We need about 6 or 7 more guys.
I like that point because if you think about it, language, and we could do a whole friggin' show just talking about
yeah.
language
I think we should
and
at some
how it
point.
affects so many different things. But language is confinement. It's putting certain things in a box because you associate concepts, ideas, and just expressions, and part of the programming is all language, right? It's everything that's going on there. It's just you are limited to certain words, certain concepts that you can apply in your head. And one of the things I've read that I thought was really cool was how different languages radically rewire your brain based on how you see things. And even like that guy you brought up, David Wynn-Miller, when he talks about like using proper syntax grammar, what it is it's almost comparatively, unfortunately, all three of us for the most part have had traditional educations, right? But imagine if we had been educated in a different way with a different manner of speaking, where just like the way that we would communicate with other people was just radically different. We could be, if you could compare it, we could be in that alternate reality way more intelligent than we are today, because the wiring in our brain would be different based on the need, that necessity, the biological necessity to have a certain structured framework of like how to communicate.
Yeah, even not having a word for can't. Right, perfect example. Yeah.
You could say like I could just really say something simply here and say, oh, maybe they're happier. Maybe they are happier people because they don't have as many they just don't have the associations for negativity in words, and they don't think in those ways, and they're not capable of it. It doesn't fit into their culture, and there's no need for it. And I just think that's really fascinating, and I think that's part of what you're going through today, where as people are being forced to affect either kind of change with the times, because we are in heavily things are changing. We are in a crucial period in history, and whether you want to say any of this stuff's going on or not, the fact of the matter is 2,000 years ago, people were pushing plowshares and didn't have any idea what how to do any of the stuff that we're doing today.
What about 10,000 years ago? Where were they?
Exactly. Well, 10,000 years ago they did, or 13,000.
Atlantis.
But, yeah,
talking about Atlantis, folks.
But if you look at this radical leap going from 100 and less than 100 years ago, you barely had cars. People still rode around on horses in the streets, and it's ridiculous. Okay, what's going to happen in the next 50 years, regardless of whether or not other things go on, but just from a technological perspective, now you're getting into Kurzweil with the singularity. It's going to be radical. So you either go with it, and you just hang the fuck on, because it's going to be a pretty fast downhill train pretty soon, roller coaster, whatever. Or you can just chill out. You could become one of those people where you could be a farmer and just you don't have any need for this. So you could be looking up and you could see UFOs and mega cities like in Star Trek, in the new Star Trek. There's like a giant crazy spaceship being built over there. Whatever, dude. I'm just growing my corn and reading Huck Finn here. It's whatever you want to do. The experience is yours.
Yeah, especially if you're born into it. I mean, it isn't a shock to somebody if you're born into it, because once you're born into it and it's a readily available resource that you see all the time and it's around you all the time, it's no longer a shock. Because if you take an infant and if we want to use the Star Trek analogy, if it sees spaceports everywhere, and if it's growing up through its infancy and its adolescence and its young adulthood, and it's saying, oh yeah, that's a spaceport over there by my high school, and this is where a lot of the docking bays go, that isn't a big deal. Now, if you're talking to an 86-year-old guy who essentially came from a time when they were using petroleum and not clean fuel and a different type of energy source, and now we're using technology like whether it be teleportation or anti-grav, that is going to be radically different. They're just going to have that look like when I used to look at my grandfather, and he would look at the internet and he would just be like, wow, all these people are connected. Wow. You know, like that wow factor, that wow moment of wow. But to somebody who is just ingrained in the culture and just around it all the time, to them it's every day. It's Tuesday. It's
You're
Tuesday
very
to them.
comfortable. You're very comfortable in it.
Yeah, and I think that's normal for any generation to look back and just say, remember where they came from. You know, they remember where they came from, what they had to do, what they didn't have to do, and you know, that'll always be something I think human beings will do, because we have that ability to always kind of we compare. We're always in a comparison mode with things. You know, we look at where we've come from, where we're going, where we're at. You know, and you know, whether you're bettering yourself, it's a comparison. It's you know, it's a process of the journey. You know, but.
Well, I think we have to wrap up here in the next couple minutes, but another thing I wanted to make sure we do as we're talking about stuff and we're bringing up things is to actually talk about or allow one of us to plug it. So the video we were talking about with David Wynn Miller is called David Wynn Miller Quantum Grammar Seminar, September 2012, and it's a series of 25 video clips. Yeah, another article we brought up is on a website called thoughtcatalog.com. It's titled "Your Lifestyle Has Already Been Designed" by David Kane, and that's another article you can find. It was one thing that we talked about. I think maybe we should get like a Facebook page, if maybe we could post this stuff on or something. Maybe
we'll do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking Twitter account ASAP.
Yeah, something.
Oh my God. I don't know if I could do that.
That's right. You're on board.
I have successfully
Jeff, you're on board.
I have successfully not joined Twitter ever. You know, other people have had Twitter accounts and deleted it. Did you ever have one?
No, never had one.
Never had one? Matt, did you ever have a Twitter account? You destroyed it, Matt.
I have it. It's open-ended.
You do? Okay.
My last tweet was like forever ago.
That's all right.
Okay, but you did it.
Jeff, you're a tweeter. You know you are.
No, I've never
born
done
to be a tweeter.
Never. No.
You're on board.
Not going to happen. They're lucky I still have a Facebook page.
That's true. I also kind of wanted to wrap up the show with a quote supposedly from Carl Sagan that I've posted on my Facebook a couple times. And for me, I don't know about you guys, it kind of encapsulates what the show is about. It is about outside the box thinking. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to end the show on this quote.
Do it.
All right, let me see if I can read it here without stumbling too much. It seems to me what is called for is an exquisite balance between two conflicting needs. The most skeptical scrutiny of all hypotheses that are served up to us, and at the same time a great openness to new ideas. Obviously, those two modes of thought are in some tension, but if you're able to exercise only one of these modes, whichever one it is, you're in deep trouble. If you are only skeptical, then no new ideas make it through to you. You never learn anything new. You become a crotchety old person convinced that nonsense is ruling the world. And there is, of course, much data to support you. But every now and then, maybe once in 100 cases, a new idea turns out to be on the mark, valid, and wonderful. If you're too much in the habit of being skeptical about everything, you're going to miss or resent it. And either way, you will be standing in the way of understanding and progress. On the other hand, if you're too open to the point of gullibility and have not an ounce of skeptical sense in you, then you cannot distinguish the useful as from the worthless ones. Our species needs and deserves a citizenry with minds wide awake and a basic understanding of how the world works. That's by Carl Sagan.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Pale Blue Dot, great book by Carl Sagan. Pick it up.
So I think this will conclude our first show, and hopefully we get to do a few other ones.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Signing off.